Well, hidey ho. I was sure I did Genesis 31 already uploaded it, but apparently not. So I'm going to do it now, and it's a long one. Let's get right into it. And he heard, this is King James Version, Genesis 31. And he heard the words of Laban's sons, saying, Jacob hath taken away all that was our father's, and of that which was our father's hath he gotten all his glory. And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and beheld it was not toward him as before. And the Lord said unto Jacob, Return unto the land of thy fathers, and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. So basically, with the whole way that he was able to take all the calves and the rams of speckled color, and more of them were born of that color, blah, 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 blah. God was blessing Jacob. Jacob's getting rich off of Laban. You see, here's the thing, and I explained in my last video. Laban is getting rich, but Jacob is getting richer. But Jacob is supposed to be working for Laban. And eventually Laban's like, hey, eventually you have married my two daughters, you're gonna have your own stuff. Here you can have the speckled and blah 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 calves. And then more of them start being born. Now, Jacob's doing most of this work for Laban. He's been working basically for him for free for 14 years now. But Laban and his sons specifically are kind of getting jealous that he's becoming so wealthy. Pretty much he's going to be wealthier than Laban. And they're saying, he got it all. Basically, if it wasn't for us, he wouldn't have any of this stuff, which is true. But instead of being happy for him, they're jealous. That should be ours. Even though the deal was, and it was made openly and fairly, that he works for him and he gets this part of the inheritance or this part of the livestock and whatnot for his work. Instead of being happy that he's getting this free, Laban's getting this free work and Jacob is making him money, he's getting jealous. Especially his sons are getting jealous of how much more money Jacob's getting, because that could be their money. You see, he's not stealing from them. He's actually making them money, but he's making more money, and they're not happy about that. Remember that. And Jacob sent and called Rachel. So basically Jacob knows this is going on, and God told him to leave. It might have just been a gut feeling like, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of Dodge soon, because these guys are not happy. Pretty soon they're going to either kill me, worst case, or at least not let me leave or take my stuff that they said I had the right to have. So anyway, verse 4. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field unto his flock, and said unto them, I see your father's countenance, his attitude, that it is not toward me as before, but the God of my father hath been with me. And ye know that with all my power I have served your father. And your father hath deceived me and changed my wages 10 times, but God suffered him not to hurt me. If he said thus, the speckled shall be thy wages, then all the cattle bear speckled. And if he said thus, the ring-straked shall be thy hire, then bear all the cattle ring-straked. Thus God hath taken away the cattle of your father and given them to me. So he even let Laban choose, which ones will be yours, which ones will be mine. It's kind of like there's this old folklore tale about the rabbit in the briar patch, and he's playing tricks on this farmer. Farmer's doing all the work. The rabbit's like, I'll get the middle half of the next crop, or I'll get the top half, you get the bottom half. And he keeps planting stuff that, when it's his turn, the rabbit's turn to get the top half, he plants, corn or something where it's on the top. If it's bottom half, he plants carrots because they're in the ground. So he gets all the good stuff. And that's, in a sense, what happened here. Only it was up to God. It wasn't like the rabbit playing a trick on the bear in this case, where he's tricking him into which one's going to grow, and he knows ahead of time. Jacob doesn't know ahead of time whether the cattle are going to be ring-straked or what, and Laban gets to choose which one he wants. And whatever he chooses, God makes it so that Jacob gets all the calves, because Jacob's the one that God is blessing. He's the one who's been serving faithfully God, so God's taking care of him. And Laban is angry about this, and he's bitter about it. So Jacob's got his wives together, told him, have I not served your father faithfully? Have I not been a good servant, honest, true, responsible, respectful? And this is how he's looking to repay me, even after all these years of working for him. And basically he's getting ready to tell him, we got to get out of Dodge. All right. Verse 10, and it came to pass at the time that the cattle conceived, that I lifted up mine eyes, and saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which leaped upon the cattle were ring-straked, speckled, and grizzled. And the angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here am I. And he said, Lift up now thine eyes, and see all the rams which leap upon the cattle are ring-straked, speckled, and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointedst the pillar, and where thou vowedst a vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out from this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. And Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, Is there yet any portion of inheritance for us in our father's house? Are we not counted of him strangers? For he hath sold us, and hath quite devoured also our money. For all the riches which God hath taken from our father, that is ours, and our children's. Now then, whatsoever God hath said unto thee, do. So, his wives are a little bit bitter about Laban, to begin with, because he basically sold him. I mean, luckily he sold him to a good man, and they're happy in their marriage and everything. He basically sold him. And kind of squandered all of his riches because he got late, because he's lazy. He saw Jacob do the work. Jacob does the work. He's blessed. They think they're going to get all this stuff, but God blesses Jacob more than Laban. They get jealous. And all the while, the women are like, you just squandered away all of our inheritance, and you treat us like strangers now because of the way you treat our husband. He's supposed to be another son to you. So they're kind of bitter towards him also. And then another thing I want to point out is God is always, or Christ, whoever it is, I'm pretty sure it's Christ who does most of the speaking in the Old Testament here. You know, he always introduces him like, I'm the God of your father. I'm the God of this event. And that's what he does here. He's like, I'm the God of Bethuel, where thou anointest the pillars, and where thou vowest vow, blah, 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 blah. So he's recalling the last time that Jacob and God came together. The last time that like an interaction happened between them, to confirm that he is God with them, because it's something that only God and he would know. It's kind of like having a secret, you know, between you and your spouse. You know, there's always, you should always, sounds paranoia, but you should always kind of like have a code type of thing to let people know if you're in danger, so that the two of you would know something other people wouldn't know. So, you know, you're talking on the phone, so here's a good example. A lot of older people get these scam calls, and they'll say, hey, this is your grandson. I'm in Mexico. I need money. This happened to my grandma a lot. And she would just ask him, be like, oh, you know, is this James? Oh, I don't have a grandson named James. You know, or, oh, is this, oh, James, what was the name of your first grade teacher? You know, to make sure it is, I am who I am. And if I say, if I came to someone and been like, someone I hadn't seen in a long time, they may not recognize me, be like, hey, Dan, it's me. Remember from middle school basketball at the Underwood tournament? You know, you remember we went there together, your mom drove us, and we competed, but we were on opposite teams. You got second, and I was on the team that you played in the consolation, blah, 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 blah. Oh, yeah, now I remember you. Yes, I know that you are who you say you are, because only you would remember that thing. And that's what God's doing. He's like, people I've heard criticize, like, it's weird how God's always introduced this way. He's introducing himself in a way that they know that he's God, because only God would know this thing. Moving on. Then Jacob rose up, and set his sons and his wives upon camels, and he carried away all his cattle and all which he had gotten in Paddan Aram, for to go to Isaac his father in the land of Canaan. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's, images of his gods. And Jacob stole away unawares to Laban the Syrian, in that he told him not that he fled. So he fled with all that he had, and he rose up and passed over the river, and set his face toward the Mount Gilead. And it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob was fled. And he took his brethren with him, and pursued after him 7 days' journey. And they overtook him in the Mount Gilead. And God came to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night, and said unto him, Take heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. So don't come across harsh, but you don't have to come across, like lovey-dovey either. But just make sure you come neutral when you come to him, is what God's telling him. Basically, God's like, he's got my blessing. Now, I don't agree with everything Jacob has done, everything Jacob does, but he has my blessing. So don't speak good or bad. Just be neutral. Also, notice Rachel stole the images that were her father's. It's not totally clear why. Whether it was because she was mad about him squandering all the money that she thought that they were ready to, and these would make her money. Whether it was because she kind of liked or still worshipped a little bit her father's gods, or if it was because she had totally come over to God through Jacob and didn't like them and was against them and didn't want him to have them anymore. I tend to think it's more the first one, and maybe a little bit of them all, but it's more the first one of just kind of being mad at her dad. Because if it was just, God's God and false images are bad, she would have just destroyed the images. She wouldn't have stolen them and taken them but kept them safe, But this gives rise to the cause for Laban to chase after Jacob, because it kind of looks bad. Jacob did kind of run away, and that feels bad because those are his daughters. Laban might want to say goodbye, but it looks bad if Laban just chases him down, But it doesn't look bad if they're looking for something that was stolen. And also remember, Laban, we see, although he's still kindred of Isaac, of Abraham, and of that line, their family, so they have similar values, he still doesn't worship Abraham's God, at least not correctly, because he still worships other images, other false gods as well. And you can only worship God if you truly worship God. Now, he might have reverence for the God of Abraham, but he didn't truly worship him. But, unlike Hagar and the Egyptians, he still had that cultural value of Abraham's line, of this is what is morally good and morally right. Now, it's starting to be a loosened grip on that because he's worshiping false gods, but it's still there. Versus Hagar, who grew up in the Egyptian culture, she didn't have any of those values. None. So understand this. This is why they keep getting sent back to their family, distant family for brides, because they still have somewhat of that hold on the morals and values versus the rest of a lot of other societies who completely, screw morals and ethics type of attitude. Verse 25. Then Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mount, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the mount of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, What hast thou done? Thou hast stolen away unawares to me, and carried away my daughters as captives, taken with the sword. Wherefore didst thou flee away secretly, and steal away from me, and didst not tell me, that I might have sent thee away with mirth, and with songs, with tabret, and with harp? And hast not suffered me to kiss my sons and my daughters? Thou hast now done foolishly in so doing. It is in the power of my hand to do you hurt, but the God of your father, not his God, God of your father, spake unto me yesternight, saying, Take thou heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. And now, though thou wouldest needs be, because thou sore longest after thy father's house, yet wherefore hast thou stolen my gods? Lowercase g. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, Because I was afraid, for I said, Peradventure thou wouldest take by force thy daughters from me. With whomsoever thou findest thy gods, let him not live. Before our brethren discern thou what is thine with me, and take it with thee. For Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen them. So Laban catches up with him, and he's like, What the F, man? You just ran away, didn't let me say goodbye to my daughters or my grandkids. I would have had a party, a going away party for you. This is some BS. Okay, this is bull. But God told me not to come across hard or good to you. But what gives you the right to just leave like that and to steal my gods, after living in my house? And Jacob's like, I was afraid you'd kill me, honestly. I mean, you kept changing my wages. You kept extending how long I had to work for you. You and your sons were getting mad at me because of how all the cattle and livestock that I had rightly earned. So I didn't think you would let me go. I mean, you hadn't let me go in 14 years, man. So that's what's up. But remember, he doesn't know about the gods that were stolen by Rachel. But I tell you what, I had no idea about these gods that were stolen from you. You just search everyone here, and if you find them, that person, you strike down right here and now. Because that is some BS. I did not want anyone to steal your gods. I just didn't think you would ever let me leave. 14 years, man. 14 years, you kept changing my wages. 10 times you changed them. So, this is the conversation they just had. Alright, and Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the two midwives' tents, but he found them not, the images. Then went he into Leah's tent, and entered into Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the images, and put them in a camel's furniture, and sat upon them, and Laban searched all the tent, but found them not. And she said to her father, Let it not displease my lord, that I cannot rise up before thee, for the custom of woman is upon me. And he searched, but found not the images. So she said she was on her period, so she didn't have to get up off the camel, and she's hiding the images under her seat. That's funny. That's funny. I can't get up, I'm on my period. No, there's no such thing as Tampax, so it's kind of messy down there. Yeah, okay. Can't you see her dad? That's like how a dad would act. Be like, yeah, you just stay there. That's fine. Like, he wouldn't even ask questions. He would just be like, in his head, gross. Like, yeah, totally. Just. Oh, that's funny. And moving on. So, they search all the tents everywhere except for under Rachel's period blood on the camel. But they don't find the images, obviously, because she's got them under her. And Jacob was wroth and chode with Laban. Chode. King James, you got some cool words and phrases. And chode with Laban. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, What is my trespass? What is my sin, that thou hast so hotly pursued after me? Whereas thou hast searched all my stuff, what hast thou found of all thy household stuff? Set it here before my brethren and thy brethren, and they may judge betwixt us both. This 20 years have I been with thee. Thy ewes and thy she-goats, 20 years, not 14. 14 for the wives. He kept working for, wow. Here's the goats. This 20 years have I been with thee. Thy ewes and thy she-goats have not cast their young, and the rams of thy flocks have not eaten. That which was torn of beasts I brought not unto thee. I bear the loss of it. Of my hand didst thou require it. Whether stolen by day or stolen by night, thus I was. In the day the drought consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep departed from mine eyes. Thus have I been 20 years in thy house. I served thee 14 years for 2 daughters, and 6 years for thy cattle, and thou hast changed my wages 10 times. Except the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me. Surely thou hadst sent me away now empty. God hath seen mine affliction and the labor of my hands, and rebuked thee yesternight. So he's like, man, this is some bullcrap. I worked my butt off for you for all this time. You were the one being sketchy all this time. Clearly I haven't stolen anything. Rachel did, but he didn't know that. So you bring everyone around. Let's see if let them judge us. See what they say. Whether I'm just, you're just, who's right and who's wrong. What the right thing to do is here. Because I don't even know anymore, man. My hands are bleeding. The days were hot. The nights were cold. And I worked my butt off for you. and you haven't even paid me my wages because you keep changing them. So yeah, I went off in the night with the last wages we agreed upon before you could change them again. He's mad. Like, he just thought Laban accused him of stealing. And when I sat back and I thought about this, there was a theft. Like, Rachel did steal the images. That is wrong. But God uses our mistakes, our sins, evil, because nothing is outside of God's providence, and he uses it for good. He uses it for good. It's just like here. The act of stealing, even though it was false images, that was bad. That was a wrong, sinful act. Rachel did the wrong thing in doing so. But it allowed for a good thing to happen. Laban now feels guilty. Laban knows that the way he hotly pursued after them to chase him down looks terrible. It makes him look, he sees it. It's kind of like when Nathan shows David his sin, through a parable. And David's like, oh my gosh, that's me. I did that. I think Laban's seeing that here. It's kind of like a wake up, like, oh man, I'm the bad guy in this scenario. I did hotly pursue my own son-in-law. And Jacob finally had the oomph to, speak up to him and be like, hey man, this is some bullcrap, all right? I'm tired of this. And Laban sees that he's wrong. Sees that he hotly pursued him. He didn't steal anything. And that he has been changing his wages. And he probably wouldn't have let him leave. And it wakes Laban up. Because God's providence is everything. Nothing outside of God's providence. The sin of Rachel stealing the images was used by God for a good purpose, for a good thing. Now, why did they even, this is what I'm saying, this is a history book. Because why would the Jews even put that Rachel stole it in there? First off, how do they know for sure? Eventually, I'm sure they got back and they saw. But that's irrelevant to the story. It could have just said that, because they may not have wanted Rachel to sound bad because she's one of the matriarchs of their tribes. So we don't want our matriarch to sound bad, especially the Jewish religion, which is kind of a female religion. So they put it in there anyway. They could have either lied, they could have just not mentioned it, they could have just been like, Laban, somebody stole his images, or his images are missing, or Laban was lying about the images. They don't. They tell the truth. They tell the story exactly as is, even though it makes Rachel look like a sinner because it was a sin. It isn't important. They tell the story as it happened, the honest way, so that things can't be like oofed and looked at as lies later on. We see this with the women who find Jesus at the tomb. Women were not looked at as people who could be trusted, so their word wasn't really trusted in society. So that's why it's hard for people to accept Jesus' resurrection, because women were the ones who saw him, his tomb and things like that. Women. Why didn't they just lie? Why didn't they just say it was Peter? Who cares, right? Who's going to know? Because it's a lie. They don't do that in the Bible. They tell you the way it is because that's the only way that you can tell the truth, is by telling the truth. Verse 43. And Laban answered, after Jacob just chode him, and said unto Jacob, these daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and these cattle are my cattle, and all that thou seest is mine. And what can I do this day unto these my daughters, or unto their children which they have borne? Now therefore come thou, let us make a covenant. I and thou, and let it be for a witness between me and thee. And Jacob took a stone, and set it up for a pillar. And Jacob said unto his brethren, gather stones. And they took stones, and made an heap. And they did eat there upon the heap. And Laban called it Jegar Sadath. Wow. That is the heap of witness. But Jacob called it Galeed. That is the heap of witness, in a different language, in Hebrew. So the first one was in Chaldean, and the second one was in Hebrew. Hebrew's easier, apparently. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between me and thee this day. Therefore was the name of it called Galeed. And Mizpah the heck? Mizpah means a beacon or watchtower, for he said, "The Lord watch between me and thee, when we are absent from one another. If thou shalt afflict my daughters, or if thou shalt take other wives beside my daughters, no man is with us. See, God is witness betwixt me and thee." And Laban said to Jacob, "Behold this heap, and behold this pillar, which I have cast betwixt me and thee. This heap be witness, and this pillar be witness, that I will not pass over this heap to thee, and that thou shalt not pass over this heap and this pillar unto me for harm. And God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge betwixt us." So he brought in Nahor in there because that's Laban's father. So you see that? Because Nahor and Abraham, I think, were brothers, or Nahor's his nephew. I think so. Anyway, they were Abraham and Nahor. So Jacob brings Nahor in there to show the connection of this God between the two of them. And Jacob sware by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered sacrifice upon the mount, and called his brethren to eat bread, and they did eat bread, and tarried party all night in the mount. And early in the morning Laban rose up, and kissed his sons and his daughters, and blessed them. And Laban departed, and returned unto his place. So that's pretty interesting. You know, Laban kind of comes at him pretty strong there back after Jacob gets mad at him, like, all this stuff's mine, alright? I'm going to let you leave with it, but don't come at me so hard, dude, because this stuff's mine. You got it from me. These are my daughters, my grandkids, my cattle. You earned it, so don't come at me so hard. And what can I do? Am I just going to send my grandkids and my daughters away empty-handed? No, that's not what I'm going to do. But don't come at me so hard, Jacob. And then they build a pillar. They're like, yeah, we're good, we're good. Laban's like, don't you dare hurt my daughters, or don't you dare take another wife. And if you do that, then we're all good. And that's cool to me, because like that makes sense what a dad would say. And Jacob's like, you're right, totally. Jacob brings in Nahor, the God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, which is Laban's parentage, so that he can show that this is our God over both of us. You don't cross this pillar to do me harm, and I won't cross this pillar to do you and yours harm. And that's their truce, basically. And then they ate on this pillar and tarried, which means partied all night, basically. And then in the morning, Laban kisses his daughters and his grandkids and says his goodbyes. So it's an interesting story. I told you it's kind of long. It's not a whole lot, like, as far as a message goes, you know, in this one. But it's interesting stuff, and it's good historical references. That's one thing I love about the Bible. And the more and more archaeologists and historians and everyone gets involved, the more and more we're seeing that the Bible's right about a lot of history, like really accurate. Like even civilizations that people thought the Bible was like, what are you talking about? It never existed. They're finding that, oh my gosh, who is it, the Tarshish people in Russia or whatever, and all these people, they actually existed, and very accurately to the Bible. The Bible's super good for a historical document. Even if you don't want to believe the biblical extra-dimensional, whatever, spiritual stuff, if you don't want to believe that, it's still a good book to read for historical references. And what we got going on here is just the beginning of a couple civilizations. Laban's family will become powerful. Jacob's line obviously becomes powerful. And this is kind of the foundation, the ancestry to these great civilizations. It's kind of like, again, I know I'm a nerd, but I kind of like Game of Thrones. And if you're like really into it, like I am, you'll know that each civilization in there has like their founders, like Brandon the Builder for the Starks, and Florian the Fool, and then Lan the Clever for the Lannisters. All these great heroes of old that kind of started this kingship. And that's what's going on here. Early patriarchs of what becomes future civilizations. That's what we're reading about in Genesis. The beginning, the setup for all these great civilizations. In Genesis 10, we read the Table of Nations. So many of those people create descendants that create a nation, a powerful nation. A group of cousins, basically, under one parentage. And that's what we're seeing here are the parentages, the beginnings of many of the earliest civilizations and most powerful civilizations of the ancient world. All right. God bless, and everyone have a wonderful good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night.